Howdy folks, and welcome back to the Practical Microservices stream. I'm hoping that my audio is working. All my indicators are saying they are. It's been a while. Had some things go on, had a death in the family, and so that took some time to go through all of that. But back and happy to continue the work that we're doing. Although today we're not going to be continuing with the Eventide port of the code from Practical Microservices, and the reason for that is it's meetup time. And so I'm going to prepare for presenting on uniqueness across streams. That is a challenging thing to do. Well, hopefully what we'll show with the meetup is that it's not that challenging, but it's not necessarily, no, it's not that it's not straightforward. It's just, it takes different tools than what we're used to if we've been doing MVC CRUD based work. So anyway, yeah, so a total pitch for the meetup. Be sure to come. I need to add the Zoom link to it as well. When I typed this up, I didn't have access to that link. But anyway, meetup is coming up Thursday, 2 days from now. What will it be? 6:30 p.m. Mountain Time. And we record them and we'll post that to YouTube. I don't think I posted last month's. Stuff happened, you know, and it didn't cross the mission critical threshold. Anyway, big thanks again to LVT. They'll be hosting us again and providing food for anyone who attends in person. So yeah, check out LVT if you're interested in automated surveillance or looking for a job. I think they have some openings. I just got a ding about something. 1 second. I'm going to check to see. Sorry, there's one number in the world that I will stop a live thing for, and that's the one that's calling right now. All right. Wife called. I'm asking if it's urgent. So if it is, I will stop the stream and go back to it. But if it's not, then okay, it isn't. Great. We'll continue here then. Okay, so meetup prep for this. What we're going to do, it's going to be in the context of, let me grab my work log here. Uniqueness across streams. A common use case for this would be, say, unique email addresses for people registering. So we did this in Practical Microservices, and the way that we handled it was I really need to draw out the map of how these events play together. Anyway, because it'd be really nice to have a visual for this, but there is the identity component, and that's actually what we were in the middle of coding for the port. The request to register comes in. The application layer writes a command to register a given identity with a given email address. The duplication check happens up at the application level in the book, and there's many pages about that. Let me just grab the book real quick, see if I can find where that happened. Let's see. Sketching the subscription process. We're still building the interaction code there. Here we go. Part 2, registering users. Fleshing out the messages, the commands. There's a part at the end, ensuring uniqueness of email addresses. That's on page 95. Validating eventually inconsistent data. Yeah, so there's a section in here, a couple of them. It starts on page 99 if you have the book, where I go through the reasons why we chose to validate it using eventually consistent view data, rather than having a component that could verify this stuff in real time. For the purposes of the book, could have done it worse, but what the meetup's going to show is like how to do this better so that we can't have the duplicates. And we've already seen some of the primitives that we'll use for it on stream. The idea that you can write to a stream with an expected version is the mechanism that we'll end up using. So, but there's some caveats here. People can't change email addresses. So you signed up with what we're going to do for the meetup. The code that I'm going to prepare for the meetup is going to be for a system that does not allow users to change their email address. So once a registration has occurred with a particular email address, well, that one's just gone. Huge problem. Totally get it that like if you wanted to just go hose the site, you could just start entering random, but like the email addresses and consume all of those. That's fine. For the meetup, we'll go through how to guarantee the uniqueness of them. And then what we'll do in the second half of it is like, okay, well, this is kind of silly that this is how it works. What if someone typoed? We wouldn't want their typoed email address to never be available to anyone. So we'll design through how to deal with that in the meetup. But for our purposes here, we're doing a system where people can't change their email addresses. And that's really the only constraint that we're working with. So what will we do? Let's model it, which means I'll need to open LucidChart, which means I'll have to go off the screen sharing real quick to do that. That's fine. And then we'll build a registration component. I'm going to call it a registration component, even though I called it an identity component in practical microservices. It's a slightly different use case here. And I thought it would be nice potentially to have a UI screen to do the submission of the registration, but we're 2 days out from the meetup. Stuff was happening in real life. But I think we can get the gist of it if we just have a script. Oh, who's this? Okay. Promotion of things. Yeah, I'm considering that a spam message. So constructive FLOA. If that was not a spam message, you have my apologies. But not opposed to people working a hustle and sharing their services, but you don't do it by just dropping in on a random Twitch stream in progress and saying that. So how do we get this to happen? Where are my moderator tools? I see I'm not logged in this browser right now. Let me fix that. The browser you can't see. It's the one on the machine that actually runs the stream. So let's see, log in there. That reloads the browser window I was using for that. Sweet. Now I've got all my tools here. So yeah, we're going to just report that for spam. What is the timestamp in the stream right now? Oh, modal dialog box is hiding that. I'm not a fan of modal dialog boxes. They almost always cover information that I care about. There we go. We're at about 12 minutes. A spam message came in. All right, that is submitted, and let's go ahead and block the user. Yeah, don't show up in spam things. Like legit, if you show up to this stream and you have something useful to contribute, be it a tool or whatever, I mean, just engage first, I guess. So I would like to further deal with this message here by pinning it. That's not what I'm after here. How do you moderate a message? Maybe like that. It still shows up in the chat history. That's unfortunate. I really ought to learn more about how Twitch operates. I don't know how to remove a message from the spam. That's what it comes down to. So, all right, cool. Yeah, we will swiftly deal with that. So, I mean, sorry if you weren't spam. It looked exactly like spam to me. So I guess, whatever. Here we go. Let's go back to what we were actually talking about. So we're building this component. We'll do it with some scripts that will simulate what would have been happening in an HTTP server, as we've seen from the month prior. My Rails skills aren't quite what they used to be. That would come back, of course, if I were doing that day to day, which I'm not currently. That'll likely change in short order, but for right now, I'm slightly rusty with Rails, and that's okay. We'll move on from there. So that's what we're gonna do. Let's make the model. So let me switch the scene here so that I can pull up LucidChart and get a document to work from. Hopefully the nice music in the background is making everything seem lovely while I do this. So let me minimize you, and we will drag you to match the size of that. And here is a blank diagram already created. That's so helpful. All right, here we go. Let's bring this in. So what we want is uniqueness of emails. So for this to work, we're going to have a registered event, let's say, and I need to change some of the defaults in the doc here. I don't know, for those of you who use LucidChart, here's a fun little tip. If you click on a thing, some shape, and there's some text in there, and then you go to the alignment menu here and you change the alignment. It's changed for that one shape, but if you click out into the background, you'll notice that the alignment has reverted here to what is that one? Centered both horizontally and vertically. So if I were to drag another one of these out here and start typing, you'll see different alignment or alignment, whichever. So let's just remove that. So if you want to change the default that all new shapes will have with nothing selected, hit the alignment button and then select the alignment you would like to have as the default. And then when you drag it out, notice that the text is again in the upper left. I would really love it if there was some way to set that across my entire account. Maybe there is. I'm not aware of it. So if you see this and you know it, then please let me know, because I would appreciate that. Let's see here. I just completely lost my train of thought. You can do the same thing with your arrows, actually. So let me copy this real quick. And, I don't want that arrow. If I were to do an arrow from there to there, notice that it's the 90-degree angle. I don't know why, but when I'm looking at the event diagrams, when I see them with the 90-degree angles, I find them really hard to follow. So I can select that particular angle, come right here to the line options and change the style to rounded. But again, if I click here, it wants to be a 90 degrees angle. Well, it's the same thing, just with nothing selected. Come here and then boom. Now you've got going to wherever you want. Maybe that's a useful tip for people. So you know what I'm going to do? Let's make a note of that. Maybe clip that out into a YouTube video or something. Or so talking about defaults in LucidChart. And so LucidChart, you can compensate me by, if I ever go into your office, I get 2 squirts of hand sanitizer, not just 1. Anyway, this is the correct orange color for events. By the way, events are naturally that shade of orange, and commands are, I believe, this shade of orange. View data, if it were to exist, is, let's say it's that shade of green. That was silly. All right, so we're going to have a registered event, and we can just keep this really simple for the purposes of showing how to ensure that things are unique across streams. We can put an email in there. I don't like to say email address. I just put email. So in the context of registering, that's what you're getting from the user. Although, we need another thing in there, which would be I don't want to say user ID. I am hard pressed to not say that because it so easily lends itself to the perils of monolithic design. But this is an email address belonging to a user. It is a user that's registering. I call them identities in the book. I think that's also valid because users, there's many facets. The users table that you have in your MVC project is an aggregation of many different facets of what that user is, and one of them is that user's identity. So I'm going to call it identity ID. I don't want to spend too much time into this because the point of this is not the name of that field. We'll just go with those two. It'll need an identifier and it needs an email. actually, what if, and this is actually kind of the point, that the email address is the identifier. And that's how we're going to manage this basically. We will address right to be forgotten legislation in this as we do it. So don't worry about that. But don't forget it. Don't let me forget it. The masses of you that are here right now. We have the one person promoting channel promotion and probably Dogecoin. Dogecoin. I don't like saying it Dogecoin. It's Dogcoin because the Doge comes from a Homestar Runner thing where Homestar Runner is talking about you're my dog, my DOGE dog. Great. Get back to the events. So let's see. These have to go into some stream. I will just crib the book decision again right here, and we can call it an identity stream. Like so, there aren't that many things that we're going to draw here. Now, the challenge with this is the registration flow you would want to make as close to real time as possible. Because, you know, first run experience, we'd like you to get in quickly if we could. And we have, I'm sure I've harped about it in these months, but I did harp about it in, I hope I harped about it in Practical Microservices. It was almost 3 years ago that came out. Wow. That's a long time ago. There are follow-up projects in the works, by the way, if you're interested in that sort of thing. I don't have a lot of details to reveal right now, but there will be more coming at some point. What was I going to say? Right, I don't remember if I harped on it, but the notion of streams have a single owner. And for an event stream, that means only one thing writes to that stream. For a command stream, that means only one thing reads from it. Like you don't pub sub a command message, even though MessageDB is a medium that supports pub sub. We're not actually using pub sub. I think actually I chose the wrong color. Here I am spreading false information. This is the true color of events. Oops. My bad. It's been a while. Okay, yeah, so one thing owns a stream. That thing does not have to be a component. It's okay, albeit rarer in my experience, that an application layer can own an event stream. Applications can't consume event streams because they just don't have the mechanism for it. They respond to requests from the real world, but you could absolutely have event sourcing in your system and not use components. When I say you could do it, I'm not saying go out and do it. I'm saying that it is technically possible to store your data as events rather than current state rows and databases with only an application layer. Like that is technically possible. You could produce a system that is both event sourced and only application stuff. We are going to do that here for simplicity and also to, actually, no, we're not. That's funny. No, we are. Right, I'm trying to think through this because we're going to simulate it being that way. So we're not actually even going to write a full-blown component here because we're not going to do a register command. We're just going to imagine, we're going to write some code that interacts with MessageDB, but it's going to be exercised from some scripts rather than making a Rails app, struggling through that for 2.5 days, then figuring out how to build a time machine so that we can go back in time and get it done before, you know, it's not going to work. So we're going to have an identity stream with a registered event. And this is so silly, but legit, that's the model right there. That's all we need for our purposes here today. Let's get coding here. This should be a fun exercise. Like, can we cobble together something that works with Eventide completely from scratch? We'll end up copying other things. So I'm thinking like not doing it from scratch. If I use all of the machinery from Eventide, if we use the component generator, it will generate us a nice skeleton, and then we could just write a class in there that does the registration operation, the kind of thing that if you had a Rails app, you might be able to take that class or be inspired by it and include it in a Rails application. So that's what I'm going to do. Do I have, so make their unique, do I have one for meetups? I don't. Let's spell Utah correctly. That'll be as good as the time that I drew Utah backwards. So if I did this, then we would move this into here. There's that. All right, so we want to EVT component, and we'll call it the registration. No, the register component. Let's call it that. All right, so what do we have here? Register component. This is our working directory. Let's get set up a little bit better here. Already in source. So meetups. That says message DB. All right, it's Utah Microservices Meetup. To distinguish from others, if you would like a presentation about microservices at your meetups, let me know. Especially if it can be attended remotely. I'd be happy to do that and spread the good word here. So register component, that's what we want. No such software, Utah Microservices Meetup. Register component, great. Some things that we'll need from someplace else. Probably just get it from here. So the composite component would have a Docker compose. Let's bring that in and just double check it real quick. Yeah, that looks right. Great. So we start with tests. But what are we testing here? We're going to have some class. So automated. I'm going to get rid of the database connection test. And then here, we're not handling a command. So we're not going to write a handler. That is not the plan at all. We're just going to make a class that we can call from a script. And that script will be simulating being an HTTP handler. And why not do this in Rails? Because I'm struggling so much with testing Rails in an event-tied world. Like it's, oh man. There are so many things in the world that if I could go back in time and change, I would do that. However, the one that's really at top of mind right now is the decision to not make a Rails controller instantiable, if that's even a word. You can't instantiate one and call methods on it, which makes it impossible to test, which proves that it wasn't built with TDD. And it's just, I wish it had been done differently. Rails is a fantastic tool. Thanks for making it, DHH and all the other maintainers. I would love it if that decision had been different. That's all I'm saying. It makes it hard to test. Yeah, sorry. Okay, off the soapbox now. Let's get back into the seat and build this. So what would we call this class? Probably register, because that's what it does. Register and registered, we'll call it. .rb. Sweet. We've got a test file to work with now. So we can require relative. Why are we requiring relative at this point? You may wonder this in the event-tied examples that we've done. We're using Test Bench, fantastic tool. Let's shine a little light on it today. Test Bench Ruby. It is a testing framework. Okay, Nathan calls it a framework, so I'll call it a framework. You call library code and frameworks call your code. By that definition, Test Bench is a framework, so we'll go with it. No, that's the wrong way. Then we'll go with that. We won't say it. That's what it is. Moving along. So yes, Nathan Ladd, who is one of the co-creators of Event-Tide, he wrote this. Scott, the other co-creator of Event-Tide, has contributed. And I love it. It's, hopefully you've seen it on the stream. It's really simple to work with. It does not have all the common trappings you'd see in other things. Like I love tape in the node world. And I thought tape was like the most minimalistic thing you could have where it doesn't get in the way. What I love about tape tests, they're just node programs. So yay. But even tape has like assert equals and that kind of stuff. And testbench doesn't. It has assert and refute, and then corresponding ones for exceptions, because you may have an exception. And I thought, how could you possibly write tests if you can't do assert equals and all of that? Well, you can. You just write the test and you use assert, and then the framework gets out of your way. It's really nice. And there's going to be some changes coming up to make it even nicer. Anyway, much like tape, a test written with testbench is just a Ruby program. So it's the way we've been doing the tests on the stream all the time. We'll just say Ruby test automated registered in this case. And that is saying, hey, let's run the Ruby interpreter and pass this file into it as its input. So when we hit that, nothing else is run. This is literally the first line of code that's going to be written. Now, if we were to compare and contrast that to the files that are generated by the generator, like we can come down here to the component loader one, so like register component here, and you'll notice there's all this stuff that's just using require. Well, why do we have to do require relative in the test file, but not in all of this code? Well, I'll show you why. This is a slight look into the initialization sequence when you start running an event-side component. So if you come here to script, this is typically how we start things. We do script start. Notice line 3 is requiring relative, which is going to load this init.rb file, which will, again, we're still requiring relative, is going to require relative to load path. And it's this load path file which sets up the load path such that when you just type require, well, now it can find the things in the places you would expect it to find them. So notice once we've required relative init, and then going back to init, we've required relatively load path. Notice that every require statement after that now can just use require, and it works. Same thing in our test. This is the entry point into the test. And so what we always type is require relative, and then the path to where we are to the automated init if we're doing an automated test. So we drop that in place, but what does automated init do? Here it is, test automated init. It loads test init, because you could have an interactive init and an automated init in it. So here's the test one, which then require relatives into init.rb, which we already saw that path. So that is why our tests start out with require relative, even though in our actual component code, we're just doing straight up requires. You know what? I'm going to extract that because I think that would be a useful thing to put into a video as well. So let's do 33 minutes or so talking about require versus require relative in event-side. So basically, once the load path has been loaded, that's when you can start just requiring things. But in a test bench program, this is the entry point right here. So make sure I didn't see that, got the wrong path to it. So we are in which folder? We are in the register one. We only needed to go up one level to get to automated init. Oh, right. And also, we're not doing JavaScript, so... Oh, neat. I did not install the gem. So that's the thing, like typed a little bit of code. Let's see the failure before we move on. So let's see, posture equals development. Install gems is what we want. That's fine. Well, while that's running, we can type out a little bit more of the skeleton. We would do a context, and we are doing the register class. And then from within there, the registered workflow for it. And let's make sure that runs. Great. So we have contexts with no tests, which is a weird thing to do. Don't check that in, basically. So we need a test. No, we can work within the context and then we do the test. Sorry, it's been a while. And my mind, things leave it. And the gist of this test is simulate an HTTP request. Boy, that was like the most annoying intonation I've ever used in my life. I don't know that it's the most annoying, but whatever. Okay, here we go. So simulate an HTTP request. That's what we're pretending is happening. A request came in and no, we're not even doing that. This is a class. It doesn't care how it's called. So let's see. We're going to call our register class with params with the email address. Really is all it needs. Okay, so if we had such a class, it might be called register, and we could invoke it. Like legit, I'm not worried about extending this code to work in a real world scenario. This code's purpose is to demonstrate how you can guarantee uniqueness of something. So we're just going to pass it an email. And this will fail because, oh, let me test my Ruby here. I think it's because the email local variable doesn't exist, because it will need to evaluate that before it can try to evaluate the method call. I could be wrong though, and it's going to be a name error. It's either register isn't there or email isn't there. So let's see which one it is. It is indeed email. It knows a function call is happening or a method call, but the thing that's being passed isn't in scope, therefore it fails. So we need an email address. And we could just put in like something at example.com. But if we don't practice excellence, we won't do excellence in the times when it really matters. So I'm going to actually make a control for this. I don't think that's superfluous. You are very welcome to think it is. Here's the trouble. I don't want an actual component here. So let's see. Let's go ahead and this will just be something called register. Am I pulling this into existence? Yes, because I need a place to put the control. So let's go ahead and move that. Deal with the buffers. That's fine. This file would just be called register because it's the loader file for it. We still have that notion there. That's just fine. Within register, we do not need consumers. Don't need handlers. We will actually have the messages folder because we are going to produce a registered event from this. So we'll keep that, but we won't have commands. That much I'm sure of. We won't have the projection. We won't need it, and you'll see why. Again, there's nothing wrong. If you have a an application that is persisting data as events because it owns an event stream, it can absolutely have an entity store in it. We won't need one because of how simple this is, and you'll see why. You might see why tomorrow and not today. Sorry, this is the way it is. So register, we do actually want a file called that, but it's not going to be this one. So we'll leave the file in place. We won't need start. We won't need store. We will need the controls and this file here. This we won't. Hang on a second. Because this class will have a stateful dependency on it because it needs to be able to write messages when that works. And I think the only way to actually pull this test off is to actually write to the database, because the substitute... No, that's not right. You can set the substitute to say to throw an expected version error. So do we need a control for that class? It could be nice. No, because it's not really the state of that class that we're controlling. I don't see a need for it right now. If we need it, we will pull it into existence. Version. Do we need version? We might. We'll clean it up if we don't. We're not going to deal with time. We will need email though. We just made that one. I was like, how did the generator know to put that in place? It didn't. it didn't. So all is right in the world. So let's see here. We would need to say module register, module controls, and then within here we would have module. Oh my goodness, can't type. There we go. Email, like so. Let's close all those there, and we would have a self.example. And right here we could put like somebody at example.com. There we go. Now we have a control for it. Can't open file for writing. That would mean that, yes, that was opened from before when we renamed the folder. So let's just take its code out. Come over here. We'll close you like so. There we go. Controls email, and that should work. So now we would come into our controls loader file, and I split that the wrong direction. We won't need the clock. We won't need the identifier. We won't need ID actually. So let's go ahead and get rid of that right now, because we're saying for our very simple example here, the ID is went up. Didn't mean to do that. It will be fine. Okay, we won't have time. I wasn't sure about version, and I don't think we'll need this. If we need it, we can put it back. But what we do need is, and this shouldn't say register component. We will need the email one. And there is no reason why, like those are the same priority in the load order. So we'll put those in place. So that is the controls loader. Now we need to go to what was the component loader, but it's not anymore. So we will want to keep that for now, at least. We won't need the commands. This will be part of it. So let's just leave that in place. We won't have handlers. We will need all of that. So that was a lot of typing, but what does it get us? It lets us come back and open our test file. And now we'll fail because, well, we won't fail because the register class is there. I don't think entities have a call method though. So I think the error will be no method call on the class register. Oh, we've got a module with the same name. Ooh, I don't like that. I'm not sure how Ruby operates in that situation. We have, let's open the register real quick here. We did that. Well, that's actually fine because how that actually would resolve is register. So which one is this going to find? I think that will find the class. I think the error is going to be that there is no call method on this register class. So let's see what happens. Cannot load such file register component. Yes, of course. That I think is in the init RB. That happens when you go renaming things. So we would want to just grab register there. Now I think the error will be no call method. What did we get this time? Cannot load such file. Oh, where was that being called from? libregister 5. Oh my gosh. Yes, right there. Let's take care of this one while we're at it. Okay. Are there going to be any more typos? What would show up in the load path to give us one? I did. That was not what I wanted to do. Here's our test file. We're trying to call this register class. It's going to invoke all of our load process. We fixed the one in init, so now it's just going to get the register file right here, which is the one we have open here. And we changed it to be register. We can look at the register class itself. Nothing in there is trying to load something else. So I don't think we'll get any require path errors. Give us that error that the register class has no method call. That is not it. Register component. The test loader. Yes, yes, yes. Where'd you go? Test init. Here we go. There is no controls. Register. Oh, there is no register component. We can catch that while we're at it as well. That would have been a new thing. So, all right. I think that covers us. Haha. No method called for register module. Not going to call that a win. I predicted the error incorrectly several times. I am happy, though, that where I got the error wrong, it was having stuff. That was better than completely misunderstanding how this would work. So, perils of using a generator intended for one kind of software and just deleting a few things here and there to make it work for something else. Good idea to understand more what all would need to change if you're going to do that. So the way to have done that without errors was just stop and think, what is the load path going to be to make this run correctly? So when we do this automated init, what files is that going to snowball into? Is that the right word? What path will it follow? And then be like, oh yeah, there's going to be the vestiges of this being a component generator in that path. And I didn't do that, so that's why we got that little bit. But now we have the correct thing that we want. It's not good enough to just get the correct thing that you want. Like if you want to stop having errors, you need to correct the misunderstanding that led to them in the first place. And so that's what I was just trying to do by talking through that. All right, so this class is not an entity class, so that's what we did there. We just deleted the stuff that made it an event-tied entity class. I don't think they'd be called that, but the type of entity class you would find in an event-tied component, we removed the include that would make it that. This is actually a stateful object. Objects have state. That we don't need another term for it. It's just an object. And this one will have a dependency on writing to the message store. So we need to give it that, but we don't need to do it yet. Our current error is that we don't have a call method on the class itself. So we can say self.call. This would need to take an email. And now the test should pass. Okay, that is surprising to me. Oh, because it's picking up the register module. Okay, so let's correct my understanding of... I am admittedly not the world's foremost expert on how the constant resolution happens in Ruby. I've been a much bigger fan of nodes where it's very explicit where something is coming from. Why I thought this would work is that this is running effectively... Notice this is not wrapped in any sort of a module. So we're at the top level when we're in this file. The register module certainly got loaded as part of the startup path, but there's a line in test init where, like in the components, it will include the component that you're testing in. It is mechanically possible to have a repository that has more than one component in it. And so if you did that, I'm not saying do that, but if you did, you would need to address this line in test init, because if you use the generator, that is, it will include the component whose name you gave when you ran the generator. So this used to say register component. We changed it to say just register. I thought that by including that this unqualified register would then refer to the class, but it kind of makes sense that it wouldn't, because it's sitting there at the global namespace and it finds the module first. Fine. I believe if we do this, that also means that I didn't look at enough of the error. This is the same error we were getting. All I saw was no method error call, but what I missed was register module. That would have keyed me off to that earlier. Now this should find the module that has a child named register, and the test passes. Yeah, okay, great. Well, that was a fun little foray into how the constant resolution works. Okay, so if we did that, this is the test where we would then expect to see a registered event produced. So this is going to look just like our component test did. So we would need to get the writer. If we're going to do that, we would need an actual instance of this class. So what we have right here won't work. So let's get a register equals register dot new. And then with that, we could say register. We don't have to type out call. What is this? 2010. I'm not sure when that shorthand was introduced. This is enough to get us to a failure though, because the, let's open up our register class. The call method that we put on there is a class method, and now we're trying to access it as an instance method. So let's read it more carefully here. Undefined method call, good. And this tells us we're dealing with an instance of the register class, and it's a no method error. So I don't think I explicitly vocalized it, but in my head, I definitely was thinking that. I'm sure you were no, I promise, like it. That one's legit. I call myself on stuff when I detect it. That was not one of those times. So now we should be passing again. Great. Okay, so now what we need to do is verify that an event was written. Not just any particular event, but the one that we're after. We know that it wasn't, but we are not proving that it wasn't. And we want to prove that it isn't before we make the code that makes it work. So let's get writer equals register.write. I'm just going to call it write. It's what we call it in the handlers. It's a fine name for it in the class. So well, there we go. Now we have enough to get an error because register doesn't have a member named write on it, which is called a no method error on register.write, where we did that. Oh boy, I just opened up 2 more panes there. Don't put buttons that do wildly different things right next to each other. No, that's probably fine. Learn to type. That's what really it is. So undefined method write for our register class. That is the full blown thing there. So we need said method, and we could do that by saying dependency write. Nope, that takes a symbol. And we would want a messaging, I believe it's just message. No, it wouldn't be. It'd be messaging Postgres, right? Almost positive about that because we need to write to MessageDB, not some arbitrary thing. Now that line is going to fail because we have neither dependency. No, we would have messaging Postgres right in there, but I don't think dependency is pulled in yet. Like, not into this class anyway. So if we try to run this, I think we should get a no method error dependency. No, we got something else. Like it totally failed to load. What happened? Do we have a syntax error? Oh, no. Okay. I was expecting red text there. Yes, that's the exact error I was expecting. Undefined method dependency. It just looked different because we encountered the error as the class is being defined. Like if you're working on, oh, hey, I do not know how to say your username. MF Drubala, how's it going? Yeah, it's going well. Thanks. So working on right now, I think if we do, sorry, let me type this into the chat here. Meetup. There we go. Yes. Thanks, Nightbot, for the help. We do a meetup for microservices projects, and the next one is Thursday night, and I'm working on the code for that right now. As for how long I've been doing Rails, I started probably 2007, but it hasn't been constant since then. So we're actually doing, right now the code is Ruby, but without Rails, using something called the Eventide project. And let me pull that up real quick. I actually need to drop from the stream right about now because I just do this on my lunch hour. But let me share this chat message right here. That's it. It's a toolkit. Oh, sweet. Yeah, thanks for stopping by the stream today. We're doing it with this Ruby-based tool. I should pull it up here. Silly me. It's this Ruby-based toolkit for building event-sourced microservices, and it's really good stuff. The book that I wrote, Practical Microservices, was inspired in large part by this, but and it uses the message store that the Eventide project produced. So yeah, just doing some straight up Ruby and no Rails in preparation for that meetup. But what I've mostly been doing on the stream is let me just grab the prop here to be rad. I wrote this book called Practical Microservices. It is all JavaScript based, but I'm taking the code project that you work through in the book and converting it all to the Ruby based Eventide framework. And that is involving some Ruby on Rails because the system that you build in the book does have a web server in it. And I just did that using Express from Node.js in the book. But to port it all over to Ruby, I'm switching that portion of the system over to Ruby on Rails, and it will interact with Eventide is what it is. So I am so sorry that you show up and now I say I need to leave, but I'm 2 minutes late to a work meeting. I do this now that I'm through a funeral that occurred each weekday from 12 Mountain to 1 o'clock Mountain time. So this time frame right here on my lunch hour. I hope to see you again in the future. Sorry to have you show up and then just jet out of here, but thanks for stopping by. And to everyone else, have a lovely, what is today? Tuesday. See you next time and happy coding.